for us to share. Now, if you could say, got it, everybody say, got it?
Got it.
Okay, we've all given permission to be recorded, so that's great. And today we have 3 wonderful things on our agenda. We have presentations by Barb Hopgood Jones and Angie Leprohon on how music has played a part in their lives, both at Wells and thereafter. And then we will have some brief comments by members of Henry's VIII on how being members of that group has influenced us. So there will be time after the 3 presentations for comments or questions, which you can either send via chat. We encourage, if you can figure out how to work the chat, to send it via chat. If you can't figure that out, don't worry. At the end, you can just say it out loud and we'll make sure we answer any questions that you have. Betsy Kimball Rogers will be handling the question part at the end. So now, if you wouldn't mind all muting yourselves, you mute your own little your own little thing there. We can get started. So we have Barb Hopgood Jones. We are looking forward to what you have to share with us today, and you can just go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, my mother went to Wells. My sister was a senior when I arrived as a freshman. And the first bit of advice she gave me was to join the choir because they got to sing with men's groups. So I did. And the very first piece of music that Crawford had us work on was Bach's B minor Mass. And I remember after one rehearsal, I just had no idea that this existed. And it doesn't matter where I've lived or what stage of my life I've been in, I've always had choral music play a role ever since. And at Wells, I continued to take piano lessons, and I did the music for Junior Stunt and directed Henry's VIII for 3 years. However, I will never forget standing outside the placement office at Macmillan as a senior and just deliberating, do I dare put music as my major? Because there were just no visions for women back then. And I was afraid that I'd end up teaching music to children and I'd end up hating children and hating music. So you can read my bio for what else happened. But through what I want to speak of today is how through a series of, completely fortuitous, totally unplanned, unimagined circumstances, I've had an incredibly rewarding life in music. One aspect is teaching piano, but that's a whole nother topic. Today, I want to focus on my stumbling, literally, into a situation in which I've been able to develop as a choral and orchestral conductor over the past 43 years. The town I live in, Stowe, is a little community about 25 miles due west of Boston. And in 1978, I was kicked up in front of an ad hoc group of 12 people. There was an incredible gentleman my father's age who was an incredible musician and would just kind of draw musicians to him. And he had organized this small spring festival, it's called. And so there were 12 people that were going to put on a showing by singing something. And I got kicked up in front and I had no idea what to do. I felt like holding up signs, stop, go, louder, because Henry's VIII was a different thing. But I found there was something intriguing about it. And of course, I ended up doing what I always do, which is to take a course. And that began what became a lifelong pattern for me, which was investing in myself every summer in one of the many, many really great opportunities for learning the art and craft of choral and later orchestral conducting. Meanwhile, working really slowly and with no real plans or vision, together with this gentleman, we gradually created an organization that presents 3 concerts a year. November and March are large choral orchestral works, usually with an orchestral concerto component. And then in May, we kind of return to our simpler roots. As I grew through my coursework, and mainly through the opportunity to learn by doing, we expanded the size of the group and the range of repertoire. And I just want to share a couple of general observations that I've made over the years. The first is that the selection of the repertoire is really important, as so many people all the singers, the players, the volunteers who help with the organization. So many people commit so much time to the piece that you select. So I want to select things that are really good musically or important historically, and worthy of the time that everybody's going to put in with that. And also, for a lot of people, this is their musical education. So each piece becomes a building block on which you can build. And as I say, over 43 years, we've done a lot of stuff. That trite expression, you need to know the score, is for sure an accurate description of what a conductor has to do. And it requires a lot of study and analysis on my part, which I find is one of the stages of this that I love the most. I spend my summers spread out all over the place, just getting to know how the music is constructed. And it's always with an eye to how to teach it to an unauditioned amateur group where you have 10 rehearsals to do a major work. And I love the challenge of how do you figure this out? And that leads to another observation, which is that you absolutely have to know the difficult material. You can't just cross your fingers and hope. And so I've kind of developed a way where I determine what's the most complex part of the work, start with the easiest part of the most difficult movement, and work out from there. Also, always know the ending of the piece, always know the ending of any particular movement. That's often the first thing I do. And the whole goal is to build confidence in everybody, because if you can have the confidence in the hard stuff or know where you're going, it helps with everything else. Another thing is the difference between rehearsal and performance. Everybody works towards a performance, but a performance is like a snapshot. You know, some snapshots are good, some snapshots are not. But if you look at the amount of time a work takes to perform versus the amount of time and commitment that goes into the rehearsals, you can see where the importance belongs. And in a rehearsal, I'm always listening, and I'm listening with an eye to or an ear for how to fix it. What can we do differently? And it's very much in the moment and very creative, because you're always evaluating. In a performance, that's gone. That's over and done with. And in piano performance, I was a wreck. I mean, my hands would shake. I was in the bathroom all the time. And, you know, one little slip of the finger and you've wrecked the piece. And early on, I discovered that my attitude towards performing with the chorus was totally different. And I decided it's for a lot of reasons. For one thing, my back is to the audience. I don't know who's out there. I don't care. The gestures are large, but the most important thing is that I'm looking at the people that we've rehearsed this, we've had fun learning it, and there's just this incredible connection that you have, and it's in the moment and it's go. So no more listening. You commit and you do it, and it's exciting and quite amazing. Another thing that I've learned, I used to, as soon as we'd finish a concert, as soon as we got the tape or the recording or something, I'd want to listen to it. And I just don't do that anymore, because what would happen is all I'd hear is, oh, we missed that, or oh, that wasn't so good. And that is not why we do this. We're not going to be, they're fantastic professional groups. That's not the goal. The goal is the experience that we have, both in the rehearsal and what we experience in the performance. So I don't want a grade. I don't want the judgment that comes with something that's preserved. You know, it's very different from the art, where you can keep going back and crafting it and making it better. With a performance, it's what it is. And one last thing is the power of positive reinforcement and positive motivation. I don't think that was really emphasized much when we were growing up. And my assumption is that everybody who's there wants to be there and they want to do a good job. And so we don't have punitive rules and stuff like that. And nobody ever disappoints. And I know I'm not supposed to do this, but truth will out. I was an English major, and English majors write. And I just want to share a couple of words about a community chorus. These are things I put together, or part of what I put together for our 40th anniversary concert, which was March 2019. And they're just comments about a community chorus. Black dots on a page do not constitute music, just as words alone cannot convey what a community chorus and its instrumental component actually is, what the experience of participating in such a group means to those who choose to come out on a Monday night and challenge themselves physically, mentally, and ultimately spiritually. Choral singing is unlike any other activity I know of. To play a sport at the highest level, you must have inherent physical ability, a tremendous work ethic, and appropriate circumstance for development. Very few of us will ever play tennis on a center court. Whatever field of endeavor, participation at the highest level of the art requires an investment over years in education, training, and a large dollop of lucky circumstance. In a community chorus, however, the sum is always far greater than any one of its parts. You do not need to qualify for a place on the stage of the Met to participate fully in the exploration of a masterpiece, but you do need each other. Unlike plumbing the depths of a great poem or novel or work of art, you cannot do this alone. Each person, like a single note on the page, is necessary and important to creating the fabric of a composition. The single aspect of this chorus of which I'm most proud is that it is an unauditioned group. While we're most fortunate to have many excellent, experienced, serious musicians in our midst, we also have those for whom this is their first exposure to the rewards of choral singing. We've performed very challenging works, from Renaissance compositions to the newly commissioned. Our performances will not win a Grammy, but for every participant, they are a unique and powerful experience. The great choral literature available to us transcends our individual belief systems, allowing us to participate in the insights of some of the greatest musical minds. We deal with compositions, something that is composed by a human hand, forged by human experience, and realized or brought to life by other human beings. Unlike so many events in our lives, which appear random, where a plan or design is not apparent, in a composition, order is imposed and creates its own meaning through structural relationships, context, development, climax, and ultimately denouement. Perhaps it is this sense of order and meaning that we all seek and which all great art provides. So finally, I would just like to share with you a brief excerpt from from the conclusion of the last concert pre-COVID. We performed this work on March 8th, 2020. Had it been scheduled 24 hours later, we wouldn't have been able to perform. And already you'll see that there are empty seats in the first couple of rows, and there was hand sanitizer all over the place. But we're all so grateful that we were able to do this. It's a special work by Anton Dvorak, Stabat Mater, which means the mother stands. And it's a single 90-minute arc performed without intermission, which examines grief. And the chorus and the soloist journey through the stages of intense grief, and by observing it, and they realize that there's nothing that anyone can do to help an individual through that stage, which is something they must do themselves, except to offer empathy, and that they can do. And in the final movement, which is where we're hopping to, attention turns to the state of one's own soul. And the text is moving. Quando corpus morietur, which means when my body dies, not if, but when my body dies, grant my spirit the glory of paradise, paradisi gloria. And so the part that we're going to join in the middle of this exultant, hard-won fugue on the word amen. And instead of ending kind of the climax of that, the chorus just leaps into a confident and joyous a cappella, meaning unaccompanied, restatement of the text. And it welcomes the Paradisi Gloria. And as the work concludes, at least I think you can almost sense the departure of a quiet and satisfied soul. So we'll get the last couple minutes of that work.
Okay, bear with me while we work through this technology.
And say art is much easier.
Well, that was fantastic, Barb. Thank you so much. We all loved it. We're applauding. That was just beautiful. It's amazing. We have another treat ahead of us now. We're going to have Angie Leprohon share what music has been like for her, both at Wells and afterwards. And I want to give a little sneak peek. We're going to have a wonderful treat because we're going to see sort of how we all looked 55 years ago. It's wonderful. Go, Angie.
Well, can you hear me?
Mhm.
I can't hear you, Andy. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, okay. I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to share with you my story. It was actually a really enjoyable trip down memory lane for me, looking through photos in the basement and, just reminiscing a little bit. So throughout my life, I've had two somewhat parallel careers in sciences and music, although many times those careers overlapped or dovetailed with each other. I've always loved music. It's been a part of my life since I was very young. I started piano lessons when I was 5 years old, sang in choirs at church and at school, and also at Wells. When I was 16, my friends gave me a Sears Silvertone guitar for my birthday when I was a senior in high school, and I taught myself how to play the guitar, learning the songs of Joan Baez and other folk singers. Some of my fondest memories at Wells are playing the guitar and singing. So I was also interested in sciences and math. I decided when I was really young that I wanted to be a doctor. So I got a degree in chemistry. But my father told me that, quote, girls aren't doctors, and he couldn't afford to send me to medical school. So after graduation, I worked at a research lab at the University of Illinois doing organic chemical research. In 1968, the University of Illinois was a hotbed of computer science, and I was naturally drawn to it. They were building the ILLIAC series of computers, ILLIAC 1, 2, and 3. And when I was there, they were in the middle of building the ILLIAC 4. So I switched to studying computer science and received my master's in electrical engineering from the U of I in 1971. During and after graduate school, I was on a team that wrote the operating system for the ILLIAC 4, a computer which was designed at the university while I was in grad school. It was considered the world's fastest supercomputer during the 1970s. And after it was built, it was installed at a NASA facility in Mountain View, California. Our office was one of the first in what later became Silicon Valley, surrounded by fruit orchards. I worked for several years on this ILLIAC project in California until the computer was operational. Well, during my time in California, I continued to play the guitar and sing folk songs. I took guitar lessons. My first music job was busking at Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco with my friend Scott Crichton, who happened to be Deborah Drysdale's next door neighbor. And she introduced us. We spent hours playing our guitars down at Fisherman's Wharf, and we earned about $5 maybe. So I really have had no formal music education. For the most part, I taught myself. And although I took private lessons in piano, guitar, and hammered dulcimer. Also, I took piano lessons as a young girl, but I still mostly played by ear. It wasn't until I started teaching music that I really learned how to read music. But I'm still not very good at it. Unfortunately, I didn't take any music classes at Wells, but I attended the Blue Bear Waltz's School of Genuine Music and Tap Dancing in San Francisco for one winter. Scott and I went there together. There they taught performing musicians the essentials of music theory, ear training, scales, modes, and a lot of guitar fingerboard. Later on, I completed my ORF training. so that I could teach. While I was in grad school, I went on a camping trip to the West, and I fell in love with Montana, decided I wanted to live there. So after 5 years of living in the San Francisco area and working in Silicon Valley, I'd had enough of the concrete freeways. So I built a bed in my old Volvo and made my way to Montana, where I've lived for the last 45 years. So in Montana, the computer jobs weren't nearly as interesting as writing the operating system for the Iliad 4. I worked for many years, though, doing contract work as an applications programmer for the state of Montana. During this time, I continued to play guitar and sing. I also learned how to play the hammered dulcimer and the Appalachian dulcimer. I played with these two gentlemen in a band we called On a Shoe String Band. But my first job in Montana was working as an actress and musician for the New Western Energy Show in 1976. I earned $300 working for an entire summer of 1976. The New Western Energy Show was a project of ARROW, the Alternative Energy Resources Organization. It was a traveling roadshow whose goal was to educate folks about renewable energy and energy conservation and recycling. 16 hippies traveled around in this old school bus with a solar collector on top of the bus to provide hot water for washing dishes and showers. We set up exhibits with solar collectors, wind generators, and composting toilets to demonstrate that renewable energy really works. We wrote and performed skits and songs to teach our audiences about renewable energy. Our heroine was usually the sun. In many ways, this was the perfect job for me because it combined my two loves, music and science or technology. I met my husband in 1976, working for the Energy Show. David is a geologist, but also a musician. He plays the Scottish bagpipes and the concertina. We put together a school program for a nonprofit organization called Young Audiences. And we traveled around Montana performing in schools all over the state. This was one winter, we just went to one-room schoolhouses like this one in Bynum. Mm. We also played in a band called Homemade Jam, performing at schools, county fairs, picnics, weddings, barn dances. Our band usually included a fiddler. I played guitar, hammered dulcimer, the musical saw. I also played piano for contra dances around Montana. Well, although I continued to do programming for the state, my heart wasn't in it. And when David and I were unable to have our own children, I realized that I wanted to have children in my life in a meaningful way. So I started to teach music classes to young children, mainly focusing on 4 through 8-year-olds. I used a method called Orff Schulwerk. It was developed by classical music composer Karl Orff from Austria, and is used around the world to teach music to children. The goal of these early childhood classes was to enhance the children's basic music skills, their ability to keep a steady beat and match pitches when singing, and to prepare them for private lessons on an instrument. They played xylophones and glockenspiels and other percussion instruments in an ensemble. Everything was taught experientially through games and other playful activities, so the children were having fun but learning music at the same time. Usually they started music classes at 4 years old and continued to 8 years old. They made many friends in music classes, and I got to know them and their families over a period of 8 to 10 years as they and their siblings kept continued to return for music classes. We were building a music community. Often the children enjoyed playing together so much that they wanted to continue after 8 years old. So I started a performance group for graduates of the music program. The Conga Club focused on West African drumming. Our the marimba ensemble played Caribbean music. We performed in schools, nursing homes, festivals. I taught music classes in my private studio for 25 years and then worked at Head to start doing teacher training. Although I loved teaching the children, I also felt the desire to learn the science behind it. I became interested in the neurological benefits of early music education, took courses in neurology, and passed this information on to my students' parents so that they would understand the importance of early music education. Well, since I live in a small town, I've stayed in touch with many of my students. It's definitely not the same as having your own children. But I feel very fortunate to have these former students and their families in my life. For the last 20 years, I've played with a group of musicians who play Irish music, adding penny whistle, bouzouki, and mandolin to the list of instruments that I play. So I want to close by saying this. Listening to and playing music.
Okay.
Good? Okay. What is it? Where was I? Oh, listening to and playing music has intrinsic value in and of itself. It brings me great joy, both to listen and to play. Over the years, I've really realized that music also is a way to connect to people and build community, like Barb was doing with her in her conducting. My life was enriched by playing music with young children and providing the opportunity for them to experience the joy playing music together. We did that at Wells too. One of the things I loved about Wells was singing together, you know, at the odd even events. Those middle of the night song fests, or in the dining room. It was fun singing all those songs in the dining room. And I firmly believe that the world would be in a better place if we could just take the opportunity to sing together.
Okay, are you done, Angie? That was wonderful. Round of applause. Thank you so much. We have one other part of our program. This will be a shorter one. But we're going to hear from several people who were in our very own Wells a cappella group, Henry's VIII. I want to just play a little clip for you before we start that, and I'll hope this will work. Won't you come along with me? Come along with me to the Mississippi. To the Mississippi. We'll take a boat to the land of trees. Let's go zoom down the river down to New Orleans. The band's there to meet us. Band's there to meet us. Old friends to greet us. Old friends to greet us. Where all the young and the old folks meet. They call it heaven on earth. This is Basin Street.
Yay.
Hey.
Okay, I think that worked. All right, so those sounds bring back very many good memories. I don't know if any of you had a chance to read that little article that was in the Wells newspaper that came out in the email. It was about our trip in the spring of 1967 to Florida. And we were all trying to reminisce about it. And we all had to admit we could hardly remember a single thing. But apparently we went because we have pictures to prove it. And it was very fun. And for me personally, Henry's VIII really was an absolute highlight of my time at Wells. As I think all of you realize, our class of 1967 was the largest freshman class ever at Wells, and I think ever after too. I mean, I'm not sure. I know they never had a bigger one before us. There were 206 of us that walked onto campus that first day, and so they had to use a place to put some of us, as I'm sure you remember, called the esophagus. I personally
Right.
I had a single in what was formerly used as a broom closet. And I was so lonely and so sad that it was just awful. But good things happened later. And when I joined Henry's VIII, it was just so much fun. I felt like I had a place to belong, and there was definitely life beyond my little dark closet. So that was my story about Henry's VIII. Now, Catherine Sawyer White is going to tell us a little bit of what Henry's VIII meant to her.
Thank you, Andy. I want to go back to something that Barb said when she was talking about choral singing and mentioning that the sum was always greater than the parts. And I think that was so true for me for Henry's VIII. I tried out for an a cappella group in high school, never made it. And so when I made it into Henry's VIII, it was a big deal. And never did I realize that that's where most of my friends would be. My whole time at Wells were in Henry's VIII. And we had fun together. We worked hard together. We were amazed with Barb's ability to find songs and teach us and direct us. And we created a community together that was more than just putting on music. I've had music in my life, all my life, but never in a professional way. I've been involved in the church all my life. So a lot of my music today is church music. And so naturally I say that's where my spiritual life is. But I think my spiritual life was in music even when I was at Wells, because there's something about making harmony together that really gets me deep inside. And I know that music is something that brings people together all over the world. But I think in Henry's VIII, I experienced it very much among the bunch of us that were working together, learning together, laughing together. And I was so grateful for that opportunity. I will never forget it. And, all these, Andy and Bohm and Sandy Schenk and Carol and all those who were also in it can remember. And thanks to Barb for setting up as, being our leader. That's mostly what I have to say about it. I remember Henry's VIII. Wow, it's so much fun.
Thank you, Kathy. That was great. And now we have another Kathy, and Kathy Bohm, and we're going to hear a little bit about what her experience was in Henry's VIII.
Okay, thanks, Andy. First, I'd like to echo everything that Kathy Sawyer just said. I think we all love being part of this singing group. We had a wonderful time laughing when things went well. And then when things didn't go so well, we groaned, joked, and then tried desperately to get things right, get the harmony right, get the rhythm right. But coming together and singing definitely lifted our spirits. We all have days back then when things were not going well? And I will tell you that singing did melt those worries away. But a few weeks back when we were discussing the presentation of this Zoom meeting and some of our recollections, I spoke about some of the stress that I felt when trying to learn the second alto part. And Barb Hopgood offered a really helpful explanation for me. She asked if I had been involved in choir performances in high school, and I had, and they were heavily dependent on musical scores. So Henry's VIII was an a cappella group, barbershop, so to speak. There were no written notes. The old songs were transferred from the old members or taught by the old members to the new, and new songs and renditions were created mostly by Barb, which was wonderful. And she would come and play on the piano our different parts. And then we were off to the races trying to get everything right. So everything was learned by ear. There were no written notes. And I wonder now if harmony could have been a little bit easier for me from time to time had I had written notes staring up at me while we were singing. I'm a little late in trying to figure out the answer to that question. But needless to say, I was very happy when Henry's VIII went to 12 members up from 8. That meant that there were going to be 3 people singing the second alto, and just hearing them in practice or during performances gave me a certain degree of confidence. Although I will mention at the end here, as I bring this to a close, that that didn't happen all the time, and that several times I'd find myself singing the melody an octave lower. And I often wondered whether the other members knew that I was creating this 5th part, but I don't know. Nobody has to admit that they heard it. I don't know. But anyway, those were my memories. I loved it, and I wouldn't have changed it for the world. So thanks.
Thank you, Candy. That was wonderful. Or Bones, as we called you. We decided we had so many wonderful Kathys that we had nicknames for people.
We also agreed that perhaps I was called Bones because that's really mostly what I sang.
That's right. Boom, 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 boom.
Oh, right.
Well, that was great. Now our last person is Carol, our wonderful soprano, and she's now going to share a few words of her own.
Well, I was going to talk about the lack of music because I don't think we understood that when we came for our 50th reunion. Barb got in touch with me. She wanted to make a CD from our old record that we had made. And I happened to have 2 copies of the record, but I didn't have a record player. So I shipped off my records to Barb and she made a CD. And I thought, oh, this is great. We'll get together in the living room of Weld and we'll sing all the old songs. And maybe she'll have the box of music that we used. And we can look at that to remember the words. And we got there. And I think it was a big surprise to all of us that there was never any music. Barb would transcribe something and then she'd sit down at the grand piano in Leach and she'd say, now here's your part and here's your part. And I don't know how we learned the words. I don't the fact that none of us remembered that we did this without music until we learned it at our 50th reunion speaks volumes for the way Barbara was able to communicate with us and get us all singing together and singing the right notes and singing the right parts. And I liked so much what she said in her description of what she's done with music, because having sung with a large choral society for a number of years, I know what it's like to sing with a group like that. And she would be my dream conductor that thinks that way about her group and how she wants them to experience every moment and savor it and work together. And so thank you, Barb, for your wonderful description. I wish I had been in your group, but I'm happy to have been in your group way back when.
Okay, thank you very much, Carol. And one other little thing, we just want to toot the horn of our leader, of Barb, again. After Wells, I joined a group called Sweet Adelaide's. You've probably heard of that. And that's a cappella music, a cappella 4-part harmony. And every time we would get together in order to start a song, someone would blow on the pitch pipe because, you know, if it was the key of E or so forth. We never had a pitch pipe because Barb Hopgood has perfect pitch. So she knew if it was in the, she knew what to hum. And so we never, and none of us realized that you ever needed a pitch pipe. So we learned that too. So it looks to me like we have, let's see, we have about 13 minutes left. And I think if any of you have, Betsy, did you get anything in your chat? Any questions?
There are a few things in the chat.
Okay.
Cynthia Morris. Cynthia, if you want to just talk about what you put up there. Are you muted?
No. She's on. She thought she unmuted herself, but she muted herself. Cindy, do it. There you go. There you
Sorry
go.
about that.
There we
It
are.
went the wrong way.
Yeah.
I remember I was only at Wells for 2 years and I regret that. But
Oh.
my life changed. But the music was wonderful, even though I wasn't in any of the groups sort of officially. But I've always loved to sing. And then I ended up teaching kindergarten for nearly 40 years. And music was a major part. The teaching, the interactions with kids, the directions. If you give them with music, kids listen a whole lot better than if you just tell them. So music is what the universal language, especially with little ones. I loved it. And then sophomore year, Kier and Quinn and Sally and Judy and Carla and Joy and somebody I'm forgetting, we lived in Boyer Cottage, which had been the infirmary right down on the lake. And we had to go to the dean, back in those days, that was scary, to get permission, but it was that overcrowding thing. They needed more space. So the 12 of us agreed that we would, go and tackle this. I can't remember her name, whatever the dean's name was.
No, it was Anne and Lindy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, but it was neat. And we followed the rules. We were so good. I was really amazed looking back on it. We had no supervision except our own consciences. So that was kind of a nice feeling to look back on.
Well, that was because I was the honor court representative, and you all know how much I follow the rules. So
I didn't know
Okay.
that part of you, Kier.
Mary comments that she loves the word universe, that the word universe has a musical connotation. And she adds, I'm so impressed with all the presentations today. They all touch chords of the heart. Thank you. Marty asks if copies of the CD are still
Rose
available.
Miller.
Are copies of the CD still available?
You mean the Henry's VIII CD?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't know
know,
either.
but I didn't make them. I had my techie make them. And he might have, if somebody, oh my God, I have no idea, but probably he has whatever would be necessary. But I think he made the cover. Didn't he copy the cover from we made the first recording, the record that Henry's VIII ever made.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, I don't know. Maybe collectively we'll figure it out.
If there's a CD around, you can make copies of it.
Yeah.
Does anybody have
I
this?
have it. I bought one.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So Betsy, was there something that Fiona said she wanted read? Did you see that part? Do you have that in your
yes,
chat?
before we get to Fiona, Karen Bloom has a academic affairs committee meeting at 4. She just wants to say this has been so much fun. I'm totally blown away by Barb and Angie's presentations. I want to put it out there, she says, that we were not only the biggest class ever, but obviously we were and remain the best class ever. Love you all, and see you next time. Okay, Fiona. Fiona has to jump off. She says, I'm so grateful that you included me in this meeting, especially since it's about music, which is one of the most powerful experiences in my life. I literally cannot imagine my life without it. And Cindy Gravely Morse says the dean was Rose Miller, whom I remember. Debbie is asking if the CD can be put on YouTube. And Angie says if someone wants copies of the CD, she can make them.
Oh,
She would have to send me
CD,
one.
Angie,
What?
do you have the CD?
No. So
Okay.
someone would have to send me one.
Okay.
I can send one to you, Angie. I have one.
Okay.
Okay.
Send me an email with, well, yeah, we can hook up. I want to know how you tried out for Henry's VIII. I never knew, I mean, I'm just curious, did Henry's VIII continue? I mean, did it continue after we left, and was it there before we?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they definitely
Oh, yeah.
did. I remember going back to the 50th reunion and thinking how very strong and powerful Henry's VIII was. I was particularly taken by the second alto part, who seemed to be very good, strong part, you know. And I was glad to be able to stand in the back of the room and just sort of sing out a little bit.
No, I think it's too bad that Fiona isn't here, because Fiona was my JA my freshman year, and I bought her guitar for $35
Oh,
within
wow.
a week or two after I got
Thank
to
you.
school.
I
And
think
it
she's
was-
going to the same meeting I'm on at
I know,
4
but I'm
o'clock, so I'll tell her.
Oh, good, tell her.
And
She's
one of
still
my
on.
sisters has
She's
that
on.
guitar now.
She's still on.
Oh, she
She's
is?
still on.
But
Okay.
Fiona was in Henry's VIII.
I'm
And-
still
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fiona is right there.
It was,
Wave, Fiona, wave.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Fiona, your guitar lives on.
There she is.
Please.
So there she is.
It's still really good. It was $35.
Fiona, what part did you
string
sing?
that I had?
What?
The 12 string that I had?
No, it wasn't the 12 string. It was a 6 string. I bought it freshman year.
Okay.
And but it was a tradition, and so many of the songs were traditional,
Yeah.
and you were taught by the people who were in it. And I think a lot of it had to do with the voices blending. So it was an ability to learn by ear, because that's what it was. You didn't have copy machines. I think that was
Yeah.
a lot of the reason that you didn't have, and there were source books like the Yale Songbook was a source for some of them, and other recordings were just becoming available. And so I would listen to other recordings and kind of transcribe them. But I was also impressed that the group that's going now, Henry's VIII now, I mean, just the kind of music is totally different. It's very
It really, yeah,
modern.
it
It's
really
fun,
is.
it's complicated. I mean, but it's great. But I think it's still a oral
Evolves.
tradition.
So here's,
Barb, could I ask one quick question of Barb before I have to jump off? And that I was like in shock and awe that you were conducting not only the choral group, but the orchestra. So did you have to, I mean, you have to know all, I mean, obviously all the music and all the parts and and getting that all together, my God, that's incredible.
impressive.
Well, I'll share just one tiny thing. Getting in front of a bunch of singers is one thing, but the players, they have invested hours, years, decades in learning their instrument. And so I felt like a complete and total fraud, because I didn't know how to do these clefs. I mean, there's an infinite amount to learn.
Right.
And one of the courses that I took really early on was really important. And they said, you don't need to know that. They don't want to be told how to play their instrument. They know how to play it. What they want from you is clarity. They may totally disagree with you about tempo or whatever, but they want you to be clear. And that was such a huge relief, because I thought I had to know everything. And they said, no, not your job. So,
Still astonishing, astonishing.
yeah, well, and then I go to the BSO a lot, and oh my God, the level of proficiency and intelligence and energy, and it's just amazing. I think it's one reason that communal music is so great, whether it's instrumental or choral.
Adding on to what Angie asked earlier, and thanks for asking that, Angie. As far as trying out for Henry's VIII, I went on to sing and have sung with Sweet Adelines too, Andy, and I sang a lot. but never had any formal training, and I didn't sing in high school. But I wish that I had known more about it, and hopefully they're promoting it more, so that more people have that opportunity and know that it's available to them. Because I had no idea that I could have tried out. You guys were also great. I probably would have flopped, but still, I didn't know about it.
Yeah, so how did you find out about it? That's what I'm curious, because I never knew. I just figured it was a done deal. I mean, I think.
Well, I think they probably sang.
You?
I think they probably sang for us at some, I mean, when we were freshmen, I mean, I think they probably, I don't know, maybe they sang for us or something. I know that Sandy tried out. See, she got in it the year before I was, and I was so sad that I didn't make it. And then I was like, oh, good. Now my roommate's on it, so maybe she can vote for me. And, I had to try out again. Then the next year I tried out again, and then
I did the same thing. I think it took me 2 tries.
Who did the tryouts?
Feel better. What?
Who did the auditions?
The people that were in it. I think I remember that cute little tiny girl named Cindy with blonde hair, and then Pat.
Cindy with an N, started with an M.
Cindy Morris.
I think she was there, and Pat Parney, and I think that, and it was sort of scary because then you had to sing something, and I thought, then I practiced it, and then I made myself hoarse, and I thought, oh, but this is good.
Life.
But yeah, I wish it had been bigger. I think it would have been fun if we'd all been. I mean, they could have had 2 groups. I mean, that would have been lots of fun. But yeah.
Well, the only other thing on the chat is that everybody seems to agree that the 60s were the high point for folk music.
Yes.
That's true.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I agree with Barb that Barb Dennison that the music today is not so easy to sing along with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in and thank Marty and Betsy and Ginny for organizing this.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
And I hope we get to hear from other people.
Yeah,
definitely. Watch your email. The next topic is later in February. We're going to be talking about social justice initiatives. And we actually have enough classmates involved in that kind of work that we will have 2 sessions on that.
It deserves it.
And there are other topics as well. So just watch your email and sign up.
That's fantastic.
Great.
Good.
Okay. Well, this has been great. And I think oh, what?
I just wanted to say,
Sure.
it's outlining to me and highlighting to me just how lucky we are to not only have had each other, but the skills and the what everybody has gone on to do, and in all kinds of different directions. But it's so wonderful that you're sharing this and having us see the successes that our classmates have had. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Everybody has a story to tell, and it would just be interesting to hear other
you're right.
stories. Yeah.
Okay, then. Well, if we, it's sad to leave you all now, but in Pennsylvania, I only have an hour till happy hour, so that's okay.
What are you gonna do for that hour?
And I just wanted to say, happy.
We have a blizzard coming here.
And I'll see you
We're
next
getting ready
time.
for the storm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Many thanks.
Bye.
Everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Barb Jones, can you stay on for just a minute?
Yes, and thank you, Betsy. She worked really hard, as did Angie and Andy, to try to, music is not easy to share.
They
So,
did
thank
great
you.
with it.
They did a great job.
Thank you.
I'm gonna stay on too, Betsy, because I want to tell Barb what a great job she did.
What do you
Really, this is Angie. It was really good, and it was so interesting to me. And to
Well,
watch
yours
it.
was too. And I felt terrible because I was saying I would have hated teaching little children.
I know.
And here you go on to just, this is what you did. I'm glad that you went after me. or else I wouldn't have.
Barb, I was concerned as the video started that it was not satisfactory.
No, it wasn't.
What,
But
I don't know what happened.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
It looked good at my computer. I mean, gosh, we had 40 people on the Zoom and, it's hard to show a video like that.
I have no idea.
They got the idea, Barb. I mean,
Yeah, they got the idea. It doesn't.
How did it sound to others of you who were on?
It was great.
Well,
Marty?
Barbie will tell you I'm tone deaf.
Yeah, she
But I
is.
thought it was great. And I wonder if there's a difference between, I have a big 27-inch desktop
Mhm.
computer. And I wonder if it was different for people with laptops. Just a thought.
I have both I use a laptop, but it's connected to an oversized monitor. It was fine on my laptop. So I can't explain it.
I can't explain it either. So
Yeah.
it's
But-
over.
there's also I read that there's a thing with showing videos of you can say how many frames per second you want and stuff like that. I mean, you can get really fussy about it, which we
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
I think if we had had more time and, we could probably figure it out if
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but I mean, I'd be happy to look.
Well, I
into
don't think
that,
we're going
or
to try to do music again.
If somebody else wants to show it.
But even Angie,
Yeah.
every once
Or
in
a
a while,
movie.
at least on my screen, you would kind of freeze. You did that just moments ago, where your speech suddenly was like coming through a tin can, and but then it came back. So there is some kind of something going on.
Transmission. It sounds like a transmission issue as
Yes.
much as anything. Yeah.
Yeah, but the pictures were great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Did
you.
they come through?
And
Yes.
listening to Henry's VIII, folks, that was great fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
What will be interesting, Betsy, is to see how it comes through on the recording.
Ooh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if indeed this mythical YouTube channel ever becomes available to us, whether we can really get it out there.
Yeah.